Are you ready for a wild ride? I'm Alexis Artin, and I invite you to strap in because this is more than a podcast. This is Look at Me Now. Hello, welcome to Look at Me Now. I'm so overwhelmed with all kinds of feelings to introduce Mr. Carlos Mencia. I'm curious because we always like to start on this podcast by looking back.
Right.
You know, it's very clear that you have a high value on comedy, on being funny, on making people laugh, on bringing people joy, on letting people reflect on the culture and truths in different ways and with different perspectives than they might carry in their everyday lives. When did you realize that that was an inherent value for you?
The first time I stepped on stage and I said a joke that I had been thinking of for years before I was even thinking of doing stand-up. That moment, and then the moment that I saw Paul Mooney perform, and he was doing things that I thought would change the world or could change the world. And I remember just having the first epiphany was like, oh my God, I can do stand up. The second epiphany was like, wait, we don't have to tell jokes. Like I can talk about my life and the way it was and how, you know, my mom is from Honduras. I mean, you know, like my dad's from Honduras, my mother who raised me from Mexico, and I can I can talk about this stuff. And that's when I had the moment. And from that point on, it became, at first, for the first 5 years of stand-up was get funny, you know, learn how to tell a joke. And then the next 5 years were take that technical part and then begin to say things that I want to say.
You're talking about how funny and comedy, really the heart of it is truth. And it is something that we all share. And yet there is something so daring about telling the truth on stage. And I remember a story that you shared multiple times in different arenas, but that when you were younger, that your mom would always say to you, whenever you said something truthful, which was also deemed inappropriate,
right?
This is not the time, this is not the place, this is not the time, this is not the place. And that when you found yourself on stage, it is the time and it is the place, and that's where you get to say all of the things.
Yeah, and I found a place where my mom can't tell me it's inappropriate. I think the first time I remember was we were in church. There was a person in a coffin. This person in this coffin had 4 teardrops on the side of his face, which literally means, I want you to know I killed 4 people. It's literally what it means. Pretty much 60-ish% of the people in that room knew somebody or were there with somebody that dude had either beat up or stabbed or robbed from or something. Like over half of the room was affected by this guy. And I remember being a little kid. Mom drapes her whole body over the casket and goes, why? And I literally was going to look at my mom and go, does she not know what everybody here knows? Half of the people are something. Like she saw it and she went, not here, not now. And I just put my head back down and went, man, like, I was like that kid. I can't say shit in this place, man. Nothing. And then, you know, I discovered comedy and I think that a big part of the backlash that I get is that I speak a truth and I spoke truths that people just didn't understand. I will never, ever forget doing a show for Rick Greenstein, and I got a standing ovation on that show at the original room. Yeah, the original room at the Comedy Store. Mm-hmm. And when I got off stage, he looked at me and he said, I don't get it. Sorry. I don't get it. And that was so disconcerting to me because I'm a math guy. Emotions, you know this, they escape me. Because you can tell me whatever you want. As a friend, you can tell me whatever you want. And I'll accept it. Yeah. And I'm also the one guy when everybody tells you, oh, man, you look great in that dress. I'm also the one guy that's going to tell you, I know they told you look good, but let me tell you why it doesn't look good in my opinion. And I'll tell you like that truth. And I think, no, I know for a fact that that truth is hurtful to a lot of people. I didn't understand that before. At that moment, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that he didn't get my pain because he doesn't know what it's like. You know, he wasn't going to hear from ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. Yeah, those 4 networks at one point in my career said, we love this idea, but we already have our Latino show. I don't think a white comedian has ever heard, we already have our white show. White comedians, especially when I first started in 1988, when somebody had a hit show, what they did was, hey, where's our other white show to put with this hit white show?
Right.
And so, those moments shape you. You know, they shape you, and it's not easy to stay happy. You know, to go up on stage and do a middle class, hey, why are things like this and why are things like that? You know, because that's not how I see the world. You know, I especially when I was younger, I saw it from a completely different perspective.
I'm not really sure if people are aware of your growing up story, like where you grew up, how you grew up. This is a real, I hate to use the cliche phrase like rags to riches story, but you've referred to yourself as a lottery ticket in a lot of ways.
Sure, but I mean, it depends on this is why in some ways I do enjoy these, because I can speak from a different perspective. But growing up in the hood gave me the ability to go up on stage and have no fear. I mean, you know this about me. I literally, and I become a different human being the minute somebody says, give it up for Carlos Mencia. I just become
I'm fully aware.
This robotic machine that incorporates what I presume are the right emotions, because it all pisses me off. It all just annoys me. And it all annoys me for the opposite reasons that a lot of people think. A lot of people think it's arrogance. No, if I was arrogant, then I wouldn't be annoyed by you. I would just look down on you and belittle you. For me, it's the opposite. I'm just like, I'm not that smart. I literally am not that smart. How do you not get this? It becomes that to me. And then that drives me.
A compassionate anger, many would call it.
I guess it is, but it's because I expect more.
Yeah.
And, just when I think, why are you doing it that way? Or what's that anger coming from or whatever? Somebody will come up to me and say, last night, I was reading a comment from somebody who said, I want to go see you perform and I hated you. I hated you for about 10 years because you made me feel stupid. You made me feel like you're better than me. And after I got over it, I went to school, I got my degree, and I want you to know that I have a doctorate now. And it was all because you made me angry. And then I realized that you were right. And then I realized that I could do it. And then I did it. And in no roundabout way, it was because of you. So when I hear those stories, then I realize that what I'm doing on stage after all these years, that's the reason why. Because I am changing the world, 1, 2, 3 people, 10, 20, 50, whatever it is. But I know I am. And so there's nothing more reinforcing to the soul.
Well, you bring up a really good point. And, it sort of brings me around to this idea of how the greatest truth tellers in our history, our global history, really, the greatest truth tellers and leaders are often the most divisive figures. They are the ones that people either absolutely love or absolutely hate. There is no real lukewarm feelings towards these people.
Right.
It's something that you've definitely had to come up against in your career. And I'm not even talking about even one particular moment. I'm saying even at a show where nobody knows anything about your history,
right.
They hear you truth tell and they're either like laughing till they cry, or they are just so enraged that they don't know what to do with themselves, all the way to, let's say, something like a white cis male Joe Rogan type coming up against a minority male, starting some beef.
Right.
And letting that sort of the beginning of cancel culture. I mean, that's a whole other conversation that we can come up against. But it's just so interesting that you are a truth teller. That is how I see you.
Right.
And how divisive of a figure it has made you.
I think that what makes me divisive is that I've never asked, is this funny? It's not what I do. And because I'm a person that lived and has a bunch of different types of friends, I get to do certain things. Like I was doing a joke the other day about somebody with a disability, and somebody kind of made a face, and I went, "Why'd you make that face?" First of all, the joke doesn't belittle the person, it uplifts that person, right? It's, anytime I put somebody with a disability in my joke, they're the smartest person in the story. They're never the dumbest.
Right.
They're always the smartest. So I said, they're the smart person, I don't get why you're being upset. And they went like, I just don't feel comfortable doing it. And I said, so you assume that they're too stupid to get the joke then? And he went, whoa. And I said, but that's basically what you're saying. You're seeing somebody with a disability and you don't even know. Like if you just saw Stephen Hawking on the street, you wouldn't think that dude right now is considered possibly the top mind in the world. If you didn't see past that disability. So for me, it is about telling truths. It is about getting to those points. But looking back at my career personally, I grew up in the hood and I needed an attitude that I did not know I had, which was, and I always thought this, but I never knew I emoted it. I never really got into fights even though I was around a lot of fights. And I kind of just never really thought about it. But I remember I would always think, if we're gonna fight, then you better kill me, because I'm not gonna fight fair, and I'm not gonna duke it up. And if you come at me in a way that I find, I literally will try to kill you. Like this fights for me that I've seen, a lot of them end in death or ended in death. Somebody coming back later with a gun. Somebody pulled out a gun. Somebody pulled out a machete. I've been there. I know what that's like. So I really never got into fights. But that attitude, that specific attitude, was very abrasive to comedians. But I didn't know I had it. Like I was put, at the Comedy Store in a competitive environment around very competitive comedians. And you know this because you know me long enough. When I used to perform at the Comedy Store back in the day when you met me, I would get bumped all the time. Back in those days, it was called paying your dues.
Right.
Right. But after I got the album deal with Rick Rubin's company, if you remember, he told me you need to go on the road. So that's when I went on the road. And when I came back from the road years later to do Ned Mencia, that 8-ish year period, everything changed. The guard changed, the attitudes changed, and the way we approach comedy changed. All of a sudden, everything that was done to me that I now had, enough celebrity to reap the benefits of, to go to the Comedy Store and just go on stage. To be with you and the girls in the car and go, hey, listen, we're going to that bar, but can we go to the Comedy Store really quick and I'll put out a set and I'll just pop in and leave. That's what, you saw it done to me many times by many comedians, by Paul Mooney, by Eddie Griffin. I mean, you've seen it. But by the time it came around for me to do it, it was hurtful. It was mean. You bullied comedians. And this is what I liken it to. I joined a fraternity called the Comedy Fraternity. And somebody said, in order to be one of us, you need to get this toilet plunger and sit on it. And I was like, what? And they're like, everybody did it. And I'm like, all right, I guess, if we're going to be brothers. And I took that plunger like a champ. And then later when it was like, hey guys, Who gets the plunger? Everybody went, oh, we don't do that anymore. What are you talking about? That is so mean. And I'm sitting there going, but so I'm the last guy that gets the plunger in the ass? Oh man, this is not cool. And I suffered from that. And, for the first few years afterwards, like anybody else, I can look at those and go, whatever, dude, stop whining, stop complaining. A lot of therapy, a lot of introspection. And then a friend of mine said to me something that really changed me. And he's a really good friend. And anyway, the story is I bought him an Xbox for Christmas. Back in those days, Xboxes didn't really have access to the internet, so you couldn't play by yourself. So if you bought somebody an Xbox and did not buy them an extra controller, you're a dick, because you know that they need it. You know it's going to happen. They're going to open it up and go, who wants to play? There's only one controller. You have to get a second. So I got a second. And I tried to put it together, but it just looked like two separate gifts. So I gave him a gag gift, which was the controller. And I pretended that was his Christmas gift until the end of the night. I ran outside to his car with the Xbox and said, dude, you're my best friend. I love you, dude. Here's your real present. That's the way I saw it. The way he explained it to me years later, 20 years later, almost specifically, was first 3 minutes was funny. And then it started to get a little demeaning. And then it got more demeaning. And then it got more demeaning. And then it got more disrespectful. And then I felt like you just brought me there to put me down or something. And by the time you brought that thing out to the car, it didn't matter. That was just one of the most hurtful things. He goes, listen, I'm telling you this 20 years later, listen to my voice. And that was the first time that I didn't get defensive and say, dude, seriously? I gave you a present a comedian played a practical joke on you. Really? This is the hill you want to die on? I didn't feel that. All I felt was his humiliation, his pain, what he was going through. And I think that I felt it because I don't complain about my life. It's just not who I am. You know this. And when I get sad for like a few minutes, a few hours tops. Like even when I woke up just pissed or sad, I know you guys went, well, he'll get over it. That's what he does. He'll be fine. He'll always come back. And so I didn't get defensive, and I saw his pain, and looking back, it came from, I don't complain and I don't tell people what I'm feeling, but like I could tell you this, I wouldn't say it if you were a regular podcaster, but you're my friend. You know that all that stuff on the internet has literally cost me millions of dollars. Like that's not even, I'm sitting here telling you straight up, for all you people that think I should pay whatever for all the sins that I've done, literally millions of dollars lost. I got a phone call from a person who had a TV show and then now has another TV show, and they're executive producers of it. Called me up to apologize. And the apology was, not too long ago, your name was brought up and I made sure that you were not part of it, because I believed everything on the internet and I was a big Rogan fan. And now I'm not. And I'm viewing all of this now and I realize I owe you an apology. I don't have a role for you. I don't have anything for you. I just need you to know that I did that and I was wrong and I'm sorry. And, you're not the person that is depicted out there. And, I said to him, well, if you're looking for me to forgive you, you're forgiven. We're human beings. You made choices that you thought were good, and that's what you did. And I can't be happy about this, but I don't want you to go through the mental hell and anguish that I've gone through because of stuff like that. So you're forgiven. And then there was this long silence, and then he started to cry, and he was like, "Oh my God, I made such a huge mistake." And I'm like, "Now what?" He's like, based on the person I thought you were, you could never say what you just said. It's like, because I was never that guy. I was never a monster. So going through all of that, I needed to learn how to change, how to see the world differently. So, when sometimes I'll be doing radio shows where they'll say like, whatever, they're oversensitive. And I'm like, yeah, but you got to look at it this way. Somebody has a spot in the main room for the first time. Their mom came from Ohio. And this is their first time seeing him in a big room. And Carlos Mencia goes on at 10 o'clock, does 40 minutes, gets off stage, and half the room walks out. For me personally, at the time, I just saw it like, yeah, that's what was done to me. This is good for the club. Those people are going to leave saying, we saw Carlos Mencia, you should go to the store. I never even was semi-concerned with them. And you know this. Never. Partially because I never would have behaved the way they did. But that being said, I now can see how those guys were very severely hurt by what I did. And so that explains to me why, when given the chance to say something negative, to say something hurtful, they took every advantage humanly possible. And I think that without my inner struggles, my working from within, I wouldn't be able to see it from their perspective. And I don't think I would have been able to come out on the other end the kind of person that I am now, as opposed to, because it's hard not to get pissed. It's hard not to fight. It's hard not to, go at people, especially me. I record all my shows, so I know what I've done when I did it to the T.
Oh, I know. You've recorded them since day one.
So, I can literally say to a comedian, all right, I can tell you when I wrote that joke and when I did it for the first time. And then you can see how the joke develops and goes, But I just realized that I didn't want to be, ironically, at the end of my career, or getting into, the later, I didn't want to evolve, is what I'm trying to say, into a Paul Mooney, even though when I saw him the first time, I wanted to become him. Toward the end of his career, I saw things that he did. You and I saw him. You and I have been sitting at a comedy club and watched him go on stage and just utterly destroy an audience. And then look at who's laughing and get pissed because they're white. And literally 3 minutes later, half the white people get up and leave and complain and bitch and go, what is this? Or a middle-class black couple, this guy is saying the N-word too much or whatever it is. I thought to myself, I don't want to be angry like that. That's the one thing I want to avoid. So ironically, he taught me in the beginning of my career the things I wanted to do. And then later, what I did not want to become.
It's so interesting because we have become such a culture embroiled with canceling. It's so interesting how you really were, and, I'm going to fold myself into this a little more right now to say that I was working, for those of you who are listening and don't know, I was working as your right-hand person, a producer on your television show, all kinds of things at the time that the Joe Rogan incident happened. And it was really jarring and traumatic for me. So, I mean, on a lot of levels. And one of the most challenging things for me about it was being somebody that has known you, has seen you in all the facets of your life.
Right.
For so long. And having, let's say, driven to countless shows with you and hear breaking news on the radio as we're driving to the show.
Right.
And you get on stage and you'll do, no joke, like 2-3 hours of material that would kill on this breaking news. There is no other comic out there that can do that. I mean, I really was saddled up next to you and in the world of comedy for the better part of a decade. I've seen you perform with all the greats. And there is not another comedian out there that can hold a candle to you in that respect. I really do believe. And this is,
don't know those people personally, but yeah.
well, no, I'm just saying from a comedy perspective and seeing what they're able to do versus what you're able to do when you get on a stage with a microphone. And
oh yeah, like on a side note, if you guys actually want to see it, somewhere on the internet, you can get a free copy of an audio recording called America Rules and listen to it. And it's all about September 11th. And it was literally recorded on the 19th of September.
I was at that show.
Of 2001.
Yep.
It was literally recorded just a little over a week after it happened. And it was all brand new material, all about what was going on. That is like
when nobody else was even daring to talk about it, and anybody that did, I mean, God rest Freddie Soto's soul. When he got on stage at the 9/11, we did a thing at the Comedy Store for 9/11 for raising funds, and it was just too dark. He just tanked. It was God rest his soul. But anyway, no, I say all this to say, at the time you were at the height of your fame with Ned and Mencia, and we were doing these, films with Ben Stiller and Forrest Whitaker, the #1 comedy tour in the country. And all of these experts were coming in and saying, don't say anything.
Right.
Don't say you're right. Don't say you're wrong. Don't say you did. Don't say you didn't. Don't say sorry. Don't say you're not sorry. Just shut your mouth.
Right.
And you and I both really felt differently about it at the time, but we listened to the powers that be.
Right.
And we were both the minorities in that situation. It was a bunch of cis white men coming in and saying, shut it. And I'm a woman, I'm an assistant, right? I mean, who am I to say anything? And I've since learned to swell into my own deservingness of being able to have my voice when I see something that I think is inequitable going on, which it certainly was. And, I do want to circle around to the idea of talking about equity and talking about the fact that you are a minority, you are a Latin male.
Yeah, but I'm not. That's the thing about my stand-up. My stand-up erases all that.
Your stand-up does, but the business that we are in, the entertainment industry that is run by cis white men, doesn't. I mean, how many famous Latin comedians can you name versus famous white comedians?
Right. Well, I can't get me. I've always done jokes about that.
Yeah, I'm not saying it to shame anybody that has achieved levels of success, white, minority, or otherwise, right?
I'm not the only comedian that's ever been accused of joke stealing. I'm just the only comedian that almost 20 years later, people still feel very fervent about. Listen, recently, Lucas asked me, and I think people kind of misunderstood, people hear what they want to hear. But he asked me Dad, why has this lasted so long? And I was like, people go, I'm like, how am I supposed to know what's in people's hearts? I don't know. So I went on Instagram and I asked, and I mean, thank God I've been going to therapy these past 10 years. Cause man, people, I gave them the opportunity to say, why after all these years are you still pissed? And they told me. And basically the conclusion that I came to, given all the data reference points, when they were talking about me negatively, whoever it was constant, it was long, and it didn't just come and go. It just lingered and it became legend. And now there are things that I listen to and I go, I can understand you think I'm a monster if you believe that I did that. You brought up Freddie Soto. So Eleanor was on a podcast where she said that I one time, literally right before he was going to go on stage, said to Freddie Soto, you cannot do your act because I'm going to go on stage after you and do your act. So you do something different. And that I said that to him and that he did it and that I did it because I was paying his bills and he couldn't complain about it. And I was like, what? That, first of all, it was the opposite. And you know this, with me and comedians, it was always write new jokes, come up with new stuff. If you suck doing new jokes, that's better than you killing doing the same jokes you've done for all these, you know this about me. And so for me, it was like, let me push them, let me push them, let me push them, let me push them. But if people think that that's who I am capable of being, I can understand the negative sentiment. And so it kind of all came together and I went, wow. And it's just going back to what you were saying. I didn't address it, but that being said, had I addressed it in the way that I would have addressed it, might have changed the trajectory of where I ended up. But I don't know that I would have been able to have the empathy that I have for humanity that I have now.
And isn't that the rub, right? There's always equal drawback to reward. There's always equal benefit to challenge. And there are gifts in all of it. And I think that there's something to be said for acknowledging that somebody recently was telling me that the greatest currency that we have is not money. It is who holds the power to tell the story.
Okay. And
I think that there is some real wisdom in that. And I think that when the power was given to others to fill in the narrative, because your narrative was missing at the time, you went quiet.
Right.
That whoever then held the narrative gained the right of way. And that story is what engraved itself, whether it was true or untrue.
Right. When you look at that, or when I looked at that, I had to say, wow, when all these comedians had the chance to shit on somebody and they had all those people they could have, they all chose me. Why? And that's where my work began. And I know for a fact that the word I would not have come up if I had fought this stuff from the beginning. Because what happens is I would have done it aggressively. I would have used that part of me that we were talking about in the beginning of the podcast to utterly destroy my opponent verbally. I mean, there were so many ways you and I sat around and strategized about how to do this, how to attack it from the best perspective. I don't think I would have learned the empathy that I learned of, man, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. Like, I called a comedian to ask him, a friend of mine, hey, did I ever do anything to you? Because after that story, I started calling friends and going, did I ever say something to you that really pissed you off or hurt your feelings that you never talked about to me because you don't want to talk about it? So many of them had stories. I mean, so many of them had stories. But one of them was, I saw a friend of mine get a standing ovation for the first time in his life. When he walked off stage, he asked me a question. And so I called him up. I said, did I do anything? He goes, do you remember that night? I was like, yeah. I said, what'd you say to me? You got a standing ovation. You walked off stage. And I said, man, one day you're actually going to be really funny one day. And he goes, dude, that shattered me. I'm like, wait a minute. What are you talking about? It shattered you. Yeah, you were my hero. You were my mentor. And you saw it. And I just wanted that a boy, or man, that was amazing, or just something. And you just told me I wasn't funny. And I'm like, that's an obvious joke. Like, you got a standing ovation. So for me, that moment, where it came from, I am just one person that cannot create your reality. I cannot change that reality. The reality is those people gave you the ultimate at the end of the show to tell you there's only one more thing we can do for you, and stand up to let you know how good you were. That's the truth. How could you even think that my truth was real? Like, why would you even think that? But with all the work, I was like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I wish you would have told me that I was your mentor. I wish you would have told me that you needed that from me. I wish you would have given me a hint that my words affected you that much. And I wish somebody would have told me that comedians are something that I'm not. Or at least I don't show it, or at least I hide it well. Such emotional, sensitively emotional people. And you know me, I'm not like that. I'm the opposite. The emotion for me is the part where I'm like, well, how much do I put in? How much do I take out? I just see the reality in this joke. I don't see the whiny cry part. You know that, like, that's not what I see. So this has led me to see the world from a completely different vantage point. And I don't know that I believe that things happen for a reason. And I don't know that it's all we learn from our mistakes. So we accept that those moments were necessary in life. But in looking at who I am, I don't know that I would be the man that I am right now without that extreme trauma.
I want to commend you on owning that. The idea of look at me now, it's really a play on words. Most people would look at or hear a title like that and think that it's about targeted revenge, that it's about look at me now, like an arrogance, right? Of, you once did this to me, but I get the last laugh here.
Right.
When really look at me now is about an inner resilience. It's about looking in the mirror with a sense of love and appreciation and gratitude to say, for everything that I've been through, for, growing up in the hood and making it out, for setting my sights, even though you were like a credit shy of an electrical engineering degree, and pivoting to go for your dream of being a comedian, even though that is a pipe dream to so many people, and then to actually really reach the highest pinnacle of that, especially as a minority male.
Right.
To then, get the proverbial shit kicked out of you as, a guinea pig of cancel culture, and to still say, you know what, this is what I'm on the planet for. And although I am a truth speaker that is divisive, as all truth speakers, the great ones seem to be throughout history, I'm not going to stand down.
Right.
And through all of that, to still commit yourself to, I am going to grow from this. Whether you believe that it happened for a reason, didn't happen for a reason, but to say, the only thing that I have left is my ability to choose to grow. And, I urge people, not just in your circumstance, but in anybody's circumstance, to say, what are we rewarding? Are we rewarding people's growth? Are we rewarding people's ability to have the dignity of their process? Or are we going to sit, be the first person to, sit in our glass house and throw stones at somebody else, and oftentimes not even be doing the work ourselves?
Well, that's a majority of things, right? It's projection. It's, most people don't work on themselves. We don't live in a society of my team is great. We live in a society of your team sucks, right? It's so much easier to belittle than it is to uplift. I'm grateful that I'm not angry like that. I'm grateful that throughout all of this, I have not put anybody down. I have not made fans' choice. I've never made anybody feel like if you like that person, then you can't like me. If you're down with that person, then you're not down with me. I've never done that, never went there. And it wasn't always easy, but as time goes by, all of this stuff gets easier. All of this stuff gets, you know what I mean? The first time you hear you suck, it's, the 1,000th time you hear whose jokes did you steal, you just delete it. You don't even live in that world anymore. And so, well,
every 7 years you completely cellularly turn over. So, I mean, you are a completely different person.
3 turnovers.
You're a completely different person. But in your sliding doors moment, you in the words of Michelle Obama, you went high. And
I just didn't want to live in the negative. I just wanted to be in a place where I wasn't just angry and putrid and,
Sure.
you know, putting out acid, you know, it's just, we do that so much. You know what? Here's an example of who I am with regards to all this stuff. The list of people that have gone through, quote unquote, the Mencia School of Comedy and gone through it and become successful is very distinguished and very long. And for years, this one over here has said to me, you need to put it out. You need to let everybody know. Everybody thinks that you take from comedy, but you give so much to comedy and you do all this and you help all these comics. Let everybody know. You've told me to do this a million times. And it's tempting, but the day that I do that is also the day that I didn't put them on the road for their own good. I did it for mine, and I'll never do that. I didn't bring Joe Coy on the road to show him to the world because I wanted credit for it. I thought he deserved to be seen by the world. I thought he deserved to be given a shot. I thought he was funny and I wanted to help him, and that's it. And so if I start now going, well, let me tell you who I helped out, it's not, now that's about me.
Yeah.
Now that becomes about me, and that's not where I want to go with this. And I guess the point is that when you change and evolve and things begin to work out and then you see the fruits of your labor, it feels so much better. It just feels, for me anyway, because now I'm aware of all of my surroundings. I see what I didn't see before. You know, when you and I first started working, I didn't see any of that stuff. And how could we? We would go to the Comedy Store, do a spot, get in the car, go to the Improv, do a spot, get in the car, go to the Laugh Factory, do a spot, get in the car, go have a late dinner at Mel's, and then go back home. Mm-hmm. You and I never saw the aftermath.
No.
We never saw the comedians in the back complaining, crying, whining, bitching, moaning, any of that stuff. For us, it was all like, hey, he did 3 great spots. Everybody loved them, standing ovations. Let's go have some Mel's. You know, we didn't see that stuff. You were there.
We didn't. And you know, it's so interesting to me. I do want to put a final button on this idea of in cancel culture, it's so fascinating to me in your particular case, because they say, oh, he's grabbing somebody else's narrative, right? That's the story, right? I mean, by the way, Cosby, who's like raped and, you know, drugged all these women, he's coming out with a special and like, yeah, let's bring all these comedians back, or, you know, actors or whoever who have done these, you know, truly, you know, maybe more cancelable things. I just find it so silly, but that, you know, here we're talking about somebody that says like, oh, you stole one joke or you bumped some comics. It's really beyond me. But
just remember, it was because of my attitude.
I understand.
Because I hurt their feelings. Did I deserve everything that I got? Was it like equitable to what I did?
Not at all.
Not at all. There isn't a comedian out there, not one. Even if I quote unquote had theoretically done, I haven't hurt any comedians. Mm-hmm. I didn't take TV opportunities away from any comedian. None of that stuff ever happened. But
I'm circling back to this idea that, you know, it was you grabbing onto somebody else's narrative, right? That's the like solid standing point that everybody's just going to ink on. And what's hilarious to me is I remember that literally when it all went down, that night I was out at a comedy club, something work related with you. And I remember walking, there was a line outside, it was the Laugh Factory on Sunset. And I'm like walking past the line, and of course everybody's talking about it. Right? Everybody's, oh, did you see the Mencia Rogan thing? Oh, da, da, da. And I literally, every single cluster of people in line that I'm passing by are all like, this one's regurgitating this one specific thing that Joe said. And this one's regurgitating something that they read on this article that came out about it. And this person is regurgitating something that they heard somewhere else. So literally everybody that is globbing on to quote unquote cancel you for stealing a narrative is stealing a narrative. They're stealing Joe's narrative. They're stealing a narrative that they heard online somewhere about somebody's opinion about what happened. And literally everybody's going, how dare he steal somebody's narrative? And all they're doing is repeating somebody else's narrative. Right. And I just found it so mind-blowing. And I'm like, does anybody see the irony in this?
No.
I mean, again, look at me now. There's a book called Good to Great. I don't know if you've read it or heard of it, but it's a wonderful business book. But there's a lot of great life lessons in there. But one of them is this idea of, are you looking out the window or are you looking in the mirror? Are you looking out the window going, there are the problems out there, the problems out there, the problems out there? Or are you looking in the mirror and going, the common denominator here is what I'm seeing reflected back at me?
Right. That's what I have to deal with.
Absolutely. It's what we all have to deal with. And it's sort of the concept of why we're even doing this podcast in the first place is, where can we take some responsibility and where can we acknowledge how resilient we are, that at any moment we really can turn it all around. So I want to ask you, we've definitely looked at the past. We've stood in the present. As we take all of this.
By the way, my new special, it's called Here I Am. If it wasn't all the work, it would have been Still Standing. Now, I don't know if you can tell the subtle difference in what those two emote.
Yeah.
But that's the difference of who I've become, right? Still Standing is aggressive. It's telling everybody you failed. It's telling everybody I don't give a shit. It's telling everybody
what I had to battle back from.
Right. Whereas to Carlos Mencia, Here I Am, is literally just, I'm right here. So
it's an I am statement in the world of coaching. And it's not like
I am here. It's like I am here. It's literally, here I am. Like, come and see me. Come and check it out. It's right here. And
call me Ned. Call me Carlos. Whatever. Here I am.
Whatever. Yeah.
And same guy.
But that's the change. I've always had. See, this is what most people don't, or you might not get. It was never a hard thing for me, ever. If you are a good friend of mine, what you learn quickly is I'm one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, and what is mine is yours. And I will literally give my friends and family so much that even she'll tell you how many times she just shook her head like, why are you giving this person that? Why are you helping these people that? Why are you, so it was never, for me, it was more the shock of the misinterpretation, right? The shock of, wait, you comics think that I want to take from you? Like, I literally want to, like, a lot of those guys, I actually at one point said, hey, come on the road with me. And some of them said, no, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But it was the shock of like, hey, wait a minute, I'm a nice guy. I'm the guy that if you ask for help, I'll help you. If you are a friend of mine and you want me to pay your rent, I'll pay your rent. I mean, I'm that guy. Like, what is all this? I don't get it.
Well, perspective is everything.
Shocker, because you know more than anybody else. Never been a time where a friend asks me for help of any kind that I'm not there for them. Even like fans and stuff. It's
true. And perspective is everything. So, I mean, you have to give everybody the dignity of their process, wherever they stand on the line of your divisiveness. But I am curious. So if we were to, we look at the past, we look at the present. We've definitely done that here. If you're to take all of that and then, looking back at the timeline, standing in the present on the timeline, turning around, facing the future, what is it that you hold a vision for?
Well, right now, that special Carlos Mencia, Here I Am, is out. I've never been funnier. I've never been better. My material has never been more incisive. So I just see that within the next 2 or 3 specials, there's going to be a kind of a come to Jesus moment with people and Carlos, because I am the one comedian that does a lot of the stuff. Like, I'm edgier now than I was before, but I do things now that's disarming, right? That allows people to really enjoy the laughter. So for me, it's like, okay, let's find the joke everywhere now. Let's expand on it. I mean, I always thought that I had this in me, and I always thought that I was writing to the entire side, and I always was called the equal opportunity offender-ish, that kind of person when they would call me, you've heard that many times. But now I get to like, I calmly see, wait, let me see every single joke I can get out of this thing. You know what I mean? You want to hear something ironic? The irony that one of the largest voices right now against cancel culture literally started the cancel culture on the internet by attempting to cancel me. Like, that's the irony of a lot of this stuff. And you know what? Without love, without therapy, without introspection, without being able to allow yourself to be weak, allow yourself to be vulnerable, allow yourself to see not only how you see yourself, but how the world sees you, which are two completely different things. Because, the world will allow certain people certain latitudes for whatever those reasons are, that sometimes are explainable, sometimes they're not. Certain people can get away with certain things. I can get away with certain things some comics can't, and vice versa. And so I think you just gotta realize I'm grateful that I can come out here and say, look, life isn't perfect, life isn't great. And when you see success stories, please look beneath, peel those layers, and you'll find that there were so many no's, so many bad moments, so many uphill battles, so many trying times, so many things that are just, they're not fair, but life isn't fair. And all of us get there. And whenever you're out there and you're feeling like, why me, or is it only me? No, it's not only you. Why you? Why not you? Why me? It just, life happens. You can.
One choice at a time, one foot in front of the other.
Ironically, when we first met, you guys met my other friends who used to call me the CF. You remember that whole control freak thing. And you guys get on me for doing that. And even for somebody that's a control freak that tries to make every single thing in my life make sense and fit and work, even I had these moments of like, Jesus, why did I do that? Oh my God, I shouldn't have done that. Like, it doesn't matter how good, how careful you are.
Yeah.
Life, you're going to fall, and it's okay. You're going to be sad, and it's okay. You're going to get depressed, and it's okay. You might even feel suicidal at one point in your life. It's cool. Not the only one. Not the only person that feels that. Not the only person going through that. Not the only person dealing with that. Just remember, there's going to be another second, and then another second, and then another, and it'll turn into a minute, and it'll turn into an hour. And unless it's, some medical thing that you really need to change, you'll eventually begin to see the world from a better vantage point. And then you can look back and go, wow, that was a sad moment. It's okay. She knows I let myself be sad sometimes. There were times when I forced myself to be sad. They still are. When I'm not really sad, because I'm like, it's life, but I force myself to be sad about the moment so that I can bury it. Because if not, I feel like there's going to be a little resent bubble somewhere in there that I didn't burp up. You know what I mean? And then at some point, somebody's going to do something or say something, and I'm going to say something on stage that I don't want to say. Yeah. And then somebody recorded it, and then it goes out. I'm like, oh man, I didn't want to do that. So
yeah,
it's a constant.
Well, we've seen that happen with several comedians. So.
Yeah. Well, but change is constant, and life is constant. And I think that today we need to begin to stop saying this sucks, that sucks, and begin to uplift.
I'm going to have this be the last thing that I say, which is, I really, in all of my studies, I understand scientifically that everything is equal parts. Like, for yin, there's yang. For day, there's night. What goes up must come down equal distance. For particle, there's antiparticle. Absolutely everything in the universe is organized to be calibrated to equilibrate, right? Equal parts.
Great.
Shadow and light. So I fully agree with you that there is, for as much grief as much relief as there is. And what are we willing to acknowledge, and what are we willing to see, and what are we willing to own in terms of, are we really just locking in on one side of a narrative and not looking at the entirety of it? Because when you do look at the entirety of it, what I believe is the synthesis of these equal and opposite parts is love. And I think that's really what we're here for. So I want to wrap by asking you a question. If you were to really allow yourself, from the perspective of owning and acknowledging and embodying the principles of look at me now, what I've overcome, that whatever I've done or not done, that I am worthy of love, and turning that lens forward into your future. If you were to look into a mirror, and honor and recognize yourself, what is it that you would say to yourself looking in that mirror right now?
I would say to myself, be grateful and proud of yourself for what you've overcome, and, to always take the time to look at my surroundings. Early in my career, I could say I was a thoroughbred horse, and I had those blinders on, and I won so many races I was in.
Yeah.
I just never had the time, the capacity, the ability to look around. When people ask me about, and this, when I did Ned and Mencia, they asked me, how much did you enjoy doing it? And I said, I didn't have time to enjoy it. That's why this next time around, I'll have time to enjoy it, because I'm so much better at what I do, and I can compartmentalize in a way that I couldn't before. But when I was doing Ned and Mencia, it was literally, Ned, go from here. Ned, go from there. Hey, go for this. We got to shoot this. You got to go over there. You got to do a thing. What about this next group? What about this next? We need this thing. We need a cold open over here. Hey, Ted's being weird. Hey, Christella's blah, blah, blah. Hey, Steve Trevino just wrote something, but he doesn't want to write. What are you talking about? Like every little, I couldn't slow it down. I was just so consumed with being good and being funny, that I didn't have the ability to do that. So now that I do, now that I see it, I look at myself and I say, you know what? You've done it right. You're at a place where you want to be. Life isn't fair. The way some people see you, is not fair, but it's life, and life isn't fair. And you take two of the most giving human beings that we've ever known, Jesus and Gandhi, and they were all love. They were all peace. They were all kindness, and they were both killed violently. And we can find more in that ilk,
Truth speakers. It's
what you were saying, when you say things that are honest and real and truthful, you shock people's worlds, because they're sitting there going, my life is this. And then I go up and say, no, it's not, and then everybody starts laughing. And that's an agreement of my statement. These people begin to get pissed, and there's a reason for that. So I'm good with it. I'm going to try every single night, every single time I perform, to get 100% of the audience. I will not. It's okay.
No,
that's fine. But to just keep trying, to do that. If
people aren't pushing back on you, then you're not actually pushing forward and making a difference. So
yeah, it's sad.
I say here's to the second coming of Carlos.
But that's sad, right? That's sad that we have to learn so many things by falling instead of learning from not just experience, but that to me is what stories are for. And stories, whether you want to say it's books or movies, whatever form you get it in, it doesn't matter to me. It's so that we don't have to repeat the same things over and over again. And I feel like if you read all the way from Plato, Socrates, Aristotle to now Kerouac, Nietzsche, Rodriguez, it's still like, we're, as human beings, we still haven't evolved past the simplicity of what they spoke of even then. So I think we need to read a little more. I think we need to grow a little more. I think we need to have way more self-confidence than we used to.
Authentic self-confidence, if I could add that in.
Yeah, because a lot of it is fake.
I want to thank you so much for being here today and being on the first season of this podcast.
You're welcome, homie. Keep
I love
preaching,
you.
Keep preaching your truth, man. This is all we have. This is all we can leave behind, our truth.
That's it.
Peace.
Peace. Join us for Look at Me Now, wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to share, like, and subscribe.